People who have been cheated on. What's the best revenge you got without ever being caught? I discovered my husband's affair on our 10th anniversary, not with dramatic screaming or thrown plates, but with absolute silence as I stared at the receipt that fell from his jacket. Dinner for two at Novel, the city's most expensive restaurant. $347 plus a $100 tip on a Tuesday when he told me he was working late. The receipt wasn't the real evidence. It was the lipstick shade scribbled on the back, Crimson Confession 8, with a phone number. It was the reservation made for Mr. Evans and guest when my last name is Chen. It was how he'd stopped touching me months ago, claiming stress from his promotion. 10 years of marriage, 3 miscarriages, a mortgage we'd struggled to afford so he could be closer to his office, all while I put my career on hold, supporting his ambitions. I didn't confront him. That night, I smiled through our anniversary dinner as he checked his phone under the table. I wore the necklace he'd gifted me, clearly purchased by his secretary, who knew my taste better than he did. "Happy anniversary, babe," he said, distracted. "To many more." I clinked glasses, watching him over the rim. "To getting exactly what we deserve." He didn't notice how my smile never reached my eyes. The next morning, I created a new email account and contacted a digital security firm. Not the kind that protects, the kind that invades. It cost me $5,000, nearly emptying my secret savings account that he never knew about. By week's end, I had everything. Her name, Vanessa Moore, age 26, 11 years younger than me. Occupation, junior partner at his law firm. The affair had lasted 7 months. I had their texts, emails, hotel receipts, photos taken through restaurant windows, audio recordings from his late meetings. I knew that in her bathroom cabinet she kept a toothbrush with his initials, that she was allergic to shellfish and afraid of heights, that he told her I was emotionally unavailable after losing our babies, that they were planning a weekend in Barbados, charged to our joint account. I learned she'd just bought a condo, that she wore size 6 shoes and favored silk bathrobes, that she left her balcony door unlocked on hot nights, that she lived alone with a cat named Pixel. What I did with this information unfolded over 6 careful months. I never raised my voice, never shed a tear where he could see, never gave the slightest hint I knew. My revenge began with research. Each night, while he slept, I'd sit in our guest bathroom with the shower running, reading divorce laws and documenting our finances. I discovered hidden accounts, suspicious withdrawals, and tax discrepancies spanning years. I created spreadsheets, saved statements, recorded conversations, a meticulous archive of every betrayal, financial and emotional. 5 weeks in, I found the envelope of cash in his golf bag, $24,000 that had never been declared on our taxes. I photographed it, then replaced it exactly as I'd found it. Meanwhile, I became the perfect wife. I packed his favorite lunches, arranged dinner parties with his colleagues, even lost 15 pounds through what I called stress yoga, but was actually calculated preparation. He barely noticed, too consumed with Vanessa to see the predator I was becoming. One night he mentioned his firm was bidding on a major contract with Keller Industries. "That's wonderful," I said, refilling his wine. "When will you know if you got it?" "Soon," he replied, "but it's practically guaranteed. Just don't mention it to anyone yet. Insider trading concerns and all that." I nodded, kissing his cheek. Then I emailed his competitor from a burner account, providing just enough information to make them competitive without revealing my source. His firm lost the contract. His promised partnership stalled. While he drowned his sorrows with Vanessa at the Parkview Hotel, room 718, $329 per night charged to his corporate card, I was making friends with her neighbors. Nothing suspicious, just a new yoga enthusiast who happened to bring homemade kombucha to the community garden. Within weeks, I knew everything about her building's security system, which had been installed by the same company that protected our home. I created my alternate identity carefully. Sarah, a freelance graphic designer who worked from coffee shops and wore no wedding ring. Sarah, who started attending the same spin class as Vanessa's sister, who complimented her shoes and suggested a happy hour that turned into a friendship, who expressed interest in investing and was introduced to Vanessa's financial advisor, the same one handling the money for her new condo. "You need a security system," I mentioned casually during drinks. "My ex's place was broken into last month. I can recommend the company that fixed his setup." By month 3, I knew my husband was planning to leave me after securing his partnership. I'd seen the apartment listings in his search history, found the consultation with a divorce attorney in his calendar, disguised as a dental appointment. I began transferring small amounts into my personal account. Nothing suspicious, just enough to build a safety net. I updated my resume and took online courses to refresh my skills after years away from my career. I reconnected with former colleagues under the guise of just catching up. On weekends, when he claimed to be golfing with clients, I visited my mother, collecting the family heirlooms that had always been mine. I quietly replaced our shared photos with identical copies, sending the originals to a storage unit rented under my maiden name. I cultivated friendships with the wives of his colleagues, positioning myself as devoted but naive. At dinner parties, I'd touch his arm lovingly. Robert worked so hard, sometimes I don't see him for days. The wives would exchange glances, their pity evident. Those same wives became invaluable sources of information, mentioning late nights when they'd seen Robert, but not at the office. When Vanessa's building experienced a minor security breach, I was ready. I'd already befriended the security consultant who arrived to update their system. My background in IT, the career I'd abandoned to support Robert, made our conversation natural. By afternoon's end, I understood exactly how their new protocols worked. Patience is the cornerstone of perfect revenge. I waited until their Barbados trip was just 1 week away. Robert came home with the scent of her perfume on his collar, kissed my cheek distractedly, and announced he had a week-long conference in Chicago. "I'll miss you," I said, handing him his favorite drink. "I'll call every night," he promised, already texting her under the table. The next morning I called in sick to the elementary school where I volunteered. Instead, I drove to the strip mall across town and purchased a prepaid phone. Then I visited a college friend who worked in hospital administration. "It's for a thriller I'm writing," I explained as she described how medical record systems worked, where security cameras were positioned, and what protocols surrounded sensitive patient information. That night, Robert worked late again. I used the time to send an email from my burner account to his firm's HR department, expressing concerns about inappropriate relationships between partners and associates. I was careful, just vague enough to prompt attention without targeting anyone specifically. The following day, I visited the pharmacy where Vanessa filled her prescriptions. I didn't do anything illegal, just stood in line behind her, noting her medication while pretending to check my phone. Later, I researched what those drugs were prescribed for: anti-anxiety medication, birth control, and something for an autoimmune condition she'd never mentioned to Robert, according to their texts. 3 days before their trip, I made my first truly active move. While Robert slept, I accessed his laptop using the password I'd watched him enter countless times. I forwarded compromising emails to my secure account, then booked a surprise couples therapy session for the exact time they planned to be at the airport. "We need this," I told him over breakfast. "I've been feeling disconnected." "I can't," he said immediately. "Work emergency that day." I let my eyes fill with tears. It took months to get this appointment. He sighed dramatically. "Fine, I'll move some things around." He canceled moments after I left for my volunteer shift. I watched the notification arrive on my phone and smiled. That afternoon, I put on a wig and glasses and went to the coffee shop below Vanessa's office. As expected, she was there finalizing preparations for their trip. I sat close enough to hear her order: soy milk, extra shot, light ice before leaving. The next day, I waited until Robert left for work, then called Vanessa's office. "This is Dr. Warner's office," I said to the receptionist. "We've had a testing irregularity with Vanessa Moore's recent blood work. It's probably nothing, but with her condition, the doctor wants to repeat the test before she travels." 2 hours later, I watched from my car as Vanessa entered the medical building. I gave her 15 minutes, then called her cell from my prepaid phone. "Ms. Moore, this is airport security. We've flagged a potential issue with your upcoming travel. Could you verify your destination and dates?" I listened as she confirmed everything. "Flight numbers, hotel, return date." "Thank you," I said. "This appears to be a mistake in our system. Enjoy your trip." That night, Robert came home with roses and takeout from my favorite restaurant. "I've been distant," he said. "Work has been crazy. Let me make it up to you." It was guilt, not affection. The roses had been bought at the supermarket across from Vanessa's condo. I knew because I'd followed him there. "I was thinking," I said, twirling pasta on my fork, "we should update our wills. With all these school shootings in the news, it got me worried about the future." He looked startled. "Our wills are fine." But we did them before your promotion. The assets have changed. I sipped my wine. Unless there's something you don't want me to know about. He agreed too quickly, attempting to change the subject. I let him, knowing I'd planted the seed. The day before their trip, I executed the first part of my endgame. I sent an anonymous email to the hotel in Barbados, expressing concerns about a guest planning to smuggle something illegal. I included their reservation details and Robert's history of carrying large amounts of cash. Then I forwarded evidence of his financial improprieties to the firm's senior partners from an email account that appeared to belong to a concerned client. At midnight, Robert's phone rang. He took the call in the bathroom, but I could hear the panic in his voice. When he emerged, his face was ashen. "Problem at work?" I asked innocently. "Just a client issue," he lied. "Nothing serious." I knew the partners had called an emergency meeting for first thing in the morning. His Barbados flight would leave at 11 a.m. The timing was perfect. As he left for the office the next day, I kissed him goodbye as usual. "Don't forget we have dinner with the Millers tonight," I said, a dinner I'd never actually scheduled. "Right," he said distractedly. "See you then." He wasn't going to make it to the airport. The partners would keep him all day, discussing the financial irregularities that had mysteriously come to light. While he was gone, I visited Vanessa's condo building, dressed as a delivery person with a package that required a signature. I knew from my research that she'd already be at the airport alone, waiting for Robert. The security guard, the same one who'd seen me with her sister, waved me up. I didn't break in. I didn't have to. I simply left the package. A Barbados travel guide with a note that read, "Something came up. Can't make it. Will explain later." R at her door, clearly visible to the hallway camera. Then I drove to the airport and watched from the terminal as she repeatedly called Robert, her face crumbling when he didn't answer because he was in meetings with increasingly suspicious partners. I watched her eventually board the plane alone, unaware that her romantic getaway had just become a very expensive solo trip. Robert didn't come home that night. At 3 a.m., he called from a hotel near his office. "Emergency with the Keller situation," he slurred, clearly drunk. "Might need to fly to their headquarters tomorrow. Don't wait up." "Of course," I said. "I understand." While he was dealing with the professional implosion I'd orchestrated, I was implementing the final phase of my plan. I emptied our joint accounts into a new one under my maiden name. I reported our savings bonds stolen and had them reissued to my private P.O. box. I transported the last of my personal treasures to my storage unit, and I visited a divorce attorney, the most ruthless one in the city, bringing my meticulously documented evidence of Robert's affair, financial deceptions, and tax fraud. "Mrs. Evans," she said after reviewing my files, "I've been practicing family law for 27 years, and I've never seen someone come in this prepared." "I believe in being thorough," I replied. When Robert finally came home 2 days later, he looked destroyed. The partnership was on hold pending an investigation. His corporate credit cards had been suspended, and Vanessa had gone radio silent after discovering he'd stood her up for a half-empty resort in Barbados. "We need to talk," he said heavily. I nodded, the perfect picture of a concerned wife. "What's wrong, honey?" "It's complicated." He rubbed his face. "Work stuff." "You can tell me anything," I said, touching his hand. "We're partners, remember?" The irony was thick enough to cut with a knife. He manufactured a story about corporate restructuring and temporary financial constraints, asked if I would mind if we economized for a while. I agreed immediately, presenting the devoted wife, ready to sacrifice. That night, as he slept the exhausted sleep of a man whose life was unraveling, I sent one final email to Vanessa from his account that I'd long since accessed. "I can't do this anymore. My wife is pregnant. I'm sorry." I wasn't pregnant, of course, but the doubt would linger in Vanessa's mind, especially after I started wearing loose clothing and declining alcohol at company functions, just enough to feed the rumor mill that would eventually reach her. For 3 more weeks, I played my role flawlessly. Supportive wife, financial partner, understanding ear for his increasingly desperate explanations. I even suggested we downsize, offering to look at smaller houses, acting completely unaware that we couldn't qualify for a new mortgage with his finances in shambles. The final act came on a Tuesday, exactly 3 months after discovering his affair. He came home to find me sitting calmly at the kitchen table. In front of me were printouts, the hotel receipts, the text messages, the photos of him with Vanessa. "What is this?" he asked, though he knew exactly what it was. "Sit down, Robert," I said quietly. His face cycled through emotions: shock, fear, anger, calculation. I could see him formulating denials, excuses, counter-accusations. Before he could speak, I placed another stack of papers beside the first. His hidden accounts, tax discrepancies, proof of embezzlement from client funds, the financial crimes that were far more serious than his affair. "You should know," I said as his face went pale, "that copies of these are with my attorney. And these," I slid the third stack forward, "are divorce papers." "You can't," he began. "I already have," I interrupted. "Your partners received anonymous evidence of your financial improprieties. The IRS has received an anonymous tip about your undeclared income. And Vanessa believes you abandoned her because I'm carrying your child." He stared at me, finally understanding. "You did this," he whispered. "All of it." I smiled for the first time in months, a real smile that reached my eyes. "This house is paid for in my name," I continued. "The investments are secured in accounts you can't access. Your career's over, Robert. Your girlfriend thinks you're a liar, and your options are these." I slid the divorce papers closer. "Sign these now, agreeing to my terms, which are actually quite reasonable given what I know, or tomorrow the district attorney receives evidence of your crimes." "You vindictive," he hissed. "You've been planning this for months." "No," I corrected him. "I've been executing this for months. I planned it in a single night while you slept beside me after her." He lunged forward, but I was prepared. The recording device was already running. "That's assault to add to infidelity and financial crimes," I said calmly. "Not your best move." In the end, he signed. What choice did he have? The terms were brutally straightforward. The house and 70% of our assets remained with me. He kept his car, personal possessions, and enough money to start over somewhere less expensive. Most importantly, he signed a non-disclosure agreement preventing him from ever discussing our marriage or divorce. "You won't get away with this," he said as he signed the final page. "I already have," I replied. "In fact, no one will ever know what happened except you and me. To everyone else, we simply grew apart. I'll speak kindly of you in public, express sadness about our separation, perhaps even shed a tear at dinner parties." He stared at me with hatred and something else, a dawning respect. "The perfect crime," he said bitterly. "Not a crime at all," I corrected. "Just justice." 3 days later, he moved out. The firm's investigation continued, but without enough evidence for criminal charges. His reputation, however, was destroyed. No law firm in the city would touch him. Vanessa had already begun dating a surgeon she met in Barbados. As for me, I returned to my career, sold the house for a comfortable profit, and moved to a lakeside cottage I'd secretly purchased months earlier. I volunteered at a women's shelter, teaching classes on financial independence. I traveled. I thrived. Sometimes at night I think about what I did and feel a moment of remorse, not for him, but for the woman I had to become to survive him. Then I remember how he described me to Vanessa in those texts, emotionally broken after losing our babies, a convenient housewife, a stepping stone to something better, and I sleep just fine. 2 years later, I received a text from an unknown number. "I know what you did." I stared at the message, heart pounding. Had I missed something, left evidence? Was Robert finally making good on his threat? Then a second message appeared. "This is Vanessa. Can we meet?" She was waiting at a coffee shop downtown, looking older than her years. The promising legal career had stalled after the scandal. New firms asked too many questions about her abrupt departure from Robert's company. "How did you know?" I asked after we'd settled with our drinks. "I didn't. Not really," she admitted. But things didn't add up. The timing was too perfect. The professional implosion, the financial disasters, the pregnancy that never seemed to materialize. It felt orchestrated. I said nothing, neither confirming nor denying. "He didn't just cheat on you," she continued. "He cheated on me, too. There were others." This surprised me. My investigation hadn't revealed additional affairs. "After you, he moved to Cincinnati," Vanessa said. "Got a new job, a new girlfriend, but old habits die hard. He embezzled from them, too. Got caught. Now he's facing charges." I sipped my coffee, wondering why she'd contacted me. "I'm not here for an apology," she said, reading my expression. "What we did to you was unforgivable. I'm here because—" She hesitated, then pushed a file folder across the table. Inside was a business proposal, a consulting firm specializing in helping women navigate financial separation from abusive partners. All legal, all ethical, but using the same investigative techniques I'd employed against Robert. "Your skill set is unique," she said, "and there are so many women who need what you know." I studied her face, looking for traps, for hidden motives. "Why would I trust you?" I finally asked. "You shouldn't," she answered immediately. "Trust the business plan, the market research, the financial projections. I've spent a year developing this while working at a shelter. The need is real, and your role would be legal consultation. Many of these women need attorneys who understand financial abuse, who won't judge them for staying too long or for fighting back." I closed the folder. "I'll think about it." As I stood to leave, she caught my arm. "He told me you were cold," she said quietly. "Incapable of passion, but it takes a burning passion for justice to do what you did. I underestimated you. He underestimated you. I don't want to make that mistake as a potential business partner." 6 months later, Phoenix Consulting opened its doors. Our tagline, printed in small text on understated business cards, "Rising from the ashes of what tried to destroy you." We never advertised our services. We didn't need to. Women found us through whisper networks, through shelter referrals, through the quiet solidarity of survivors. To the public, we were just another financial consulting firm. To our clients, we were salvation. And on the wall of my private office, visible only to me, hangs a small framed receipt from Novel Restaurant, a reminder that the best revenge isn't just about getting even, it's about becoming unstoppable. The firm grew rapidly. Within 2 years, we had offices in 3 cities, all places with concentrations of wealth and consequently concentrations of entitled men who discarded wives like upgrade-ready smartphones. Our services weren't cheap, but we operated on a sliding scale. Wealthy clients subsidized those with fewer resources. We took pro bono cases when we identified women in particularly dangerous situations. What we did existed in a gray area, not quite legal investigation, not quite therapy, not quite financial advising. We were careful to maintain appropriate licenses and certifications, to document everything defensively, to always stay on the right side of the law. Our staff expanded to include forensic accountants, private investigators, cybersecurity experts, and therapists specializing in trauma recovery. Many had their own stories of betrayal. All were committed to our mission. We helped women recover assets hidden in offshore accounts, documented patterns of emotional and financial abuse that strengthened custody cases, taught clients to protect themselves digitally, to recognize gaslighting, to rebuild financial independence. I rarely worked directly with clients anymore. My face was too valuable to keep anonymous. Instead, I managed operations, directed investigations, and trained new staff in what I called ethical infiltration. It wasn't revenge we offered. It was restoration, the chance to reclaim what had been stolen. Dignity, security, identity. Vanessa handled the legal strategy, building a network of attorneys across the country who understood our approach. Our relationship remained professional, layered with mutual respect and the silent acknowledgement of our complicated history. Then Robert reappeared. The news came through our monitoring system, which tracked certain names across legal databases. He'd served his 18 months for financial fraud and was working at a small firm in Phoenix, ironically close to our newest office. I dismissed it as irrelevant until a new client arrived. Patricia Weber, 41, married to Jonathan Weber for 12 years, children aged 10 and 8, suspected her husband was having an affair with a colleague. During her intake interview, our investigator noted a detail that flagged the case for my attention. Jonathan Weber's law firm had recently hired a new associate, Robert Evans. I studied Patricia's file carefully. The pattern was identical. Secret accounts, unexplained absences, gaslighting when she questioned anything, the deprecating comments about her intelligence, her appearance, her emotional stability. My first instinct was to recuse myself from her case. Too personal, too close. My second instinct was to burn Jonathan Weber's life to the ground. I did neither. "I'd like to take Mrs. Weber's case personally," I told our management team. "I think my experience is particularly relevant here." Vanessa gave me a sharp look. "Does this have anything to do with the new hire at Weber's firm?" "Perhaps," I admitted, "but my interest is purely professional." She didn't believe me. I wouldn't have believed me either, but she nodded. "Just remember what we tell our clients. The goal isn't revenge, it's justice." I met Patricia the following day. She was a younger version of who I had been, educated, accomplished, exhausted from trying to hold everything together while her husband systematically dismantled her self-worth. "I feel crazy," she said, twisting her wedding ring. "Some days I convinced myself I'm imagining things." "You're not crazy," I assured her, "and you're not alone." I didn't tell her about Robert, not yet. Instead, I outlined our approach: the documentation, the financial tracking, the strategic planning for whatever outcome she wanted. "I don't know what I want," she admitted. "Part of me still loves him. Is that pathetic?" "It's human," I said, "and it's your choice. We're not here to tell you to leave. We're here to give you options." She chose to begin with surveillance, wanted concrete evidence before making any decisions. We assigned our best investigator. Within 2 weeks, we had it. Jonathan Weber was indeed having an affair with a paralegal at his firm. They met 3 times weekly at an apartment paid for through a shell company he'd established. What we hadn't anticipated was that Robert was also involved, not with the affair, but with Jonathan's financial arrangements. He was helping establish offshore accounts, creating legal cover for money laundering, essentially setting up the same system he'd used to hide his own assets. In our conference room, Patricia stared at the evidence: photos, bank statements, transcripts of conversations. "How could I not see it?" she whispered. "Because he worked very hard to hide it," I replied. "Because people like your husband and the men who enable him are practiced at deception. It's not a reflection on you." She looked up, tears streaming down her face. "What do I do now?" "That depends," I said. "Do you want to stay or do you want to leave?" "I want him to hurt like I'm hurting." I understood that impulse all too well. "Revenge feels good in the moment," I told her. "But justice lasts longer, and rebuilding your life lasts forever." She thought for a long moment. "I want both, justice and a new life." I smiled. "Then let's make that happen." We developed a strategy specific to Patricia's situation. Unlike my scorched earth approach with Robert, hers was more measured. We documented the affair and the financial crimes, but didn't expose them immediately. Instead, we helped her secure her own financial position, establish independent credit, and gather evidence systematically. "You're teaching me to be a spy in my own marriage," she said during one of our planning sessions. "I'm teaching you to protect yourself," I corrected. One evening, as we were reviewing new evidence, Patricia asked the question I'd been dreading. "You seem to have personal experience with this. Did your husband cheat too?" I considered deflecting, but decided on honesty. At least, partial honesty. "Yes," I said, "and I handled it decisively." "Is that why you started this company?" "Partly. I realized there were many women in similar situations without the skills to navigate them." She studied me. "There's more to it than that." I sighed. "There's always more, but right now we need to focus on you." The next day, our investigator brought news that changed everything. Robert and Jonathan were expanding their operation, recruiting other attorneys into their financial scheme. They had approached Patricia's brother, a junior partner at another firm. "They've invited your brother to a meeting tomorrow night," I told Patricia, "to explain their system." Her face hardened. "Oliver would never participate in something illegal." "Probably not knowingly," I agreed, "but they're very good at making these arrangements appear legitimate." She made a decision then. "I want to warn him, and I want him to help us." Oliver Weber turned out to be a crucial ally. Shocked by our evidence, he agreed to attend the meeting wearing a recording device. The transcript he provided documented everything: Robert and Jonathan explicitly describing how they helped wealthy clients hide assets during divorces, evade taxes, and launder questionable income through seemingly legitimate businesses. "This is beyond a divorce case now," Vanessa warned during our strategy meeting. "We're looking at federal crimes." I nodded, "which gives Patricia extraordinary leverage." What followed was the most elegantly executed client resolution in our firm's history. Patricia confronted Jonathan with 2 options: a quiet divorce with extremely favorable terms or exposure of his criminal enterprise. "How did you figure this out?" he demanded, face pale as he reviewed the evidence we'd assembled. "I had help," she replied simply. "He chose the quiet route, of course, signed over the house, agreed to generous child support and alimony, relinquished claims to her business, and most importantly, granted her primary custody of their children. As for Robert, we handled him differently. Once Patricia's settlement was finalized and legally binding, We anonymously sent the evidence of the financial crimes to both the State Bar Association and the FBI. Included were the recordings, the documentation of offshore accounts, and a comprehensive outline of their entire operation. The indictments came 2 months later. Jonathan, Robert, and 3 other attorneys were charged with multiple counts of fraud, money laundering, and tax evasion. The morning the news broke, Patricia came to our office with a bouquet of lilies. "Thank you," she said simply. "You gave me my life back." I accepted the flowers. "You reclaimed your life yourself. We just showed you the path." After she left, Vanessa lingered in my office doorway. "That's twice now for Robert," she observed. "Think he'll make the connection?" "Does it matter?" I asked. "He's facing 15 years. By the time he's out, we'll be a global company." She smiled slightly. "This was never just about helping women for you, was it? It was about making what happened to you mean something." "Perhaps," I admitted. "But does the motivation matter if the outcome helps people?" "I suppose not." She turned to leave, then stopped. "Just make sure revenge doesn't consume you. You have too much to offer the world." That night I sat on my deck overlooking the lake, watching the sunset paint the water gold. I thought about Robert facing his second prison term, about Jonathan losing his family and freedom, about Patricia beginning her new life, about the women we'd helped and those we hadn't reached yet. I'd built something meaningful,